Hey everybody, Clarence here. Hope you're all doing well. Sadly, we had to keep everybody at home for another youth night because of all the rising cases out there. So we just want to thank y'all for your flexibility. Thank y'all for your patience. We just keep asking everybody to do your part out there. Us leaders really miss you and want to see you in the building again super soon, but we all have to do whatever we can to keep our community safe. So we can get through this together. Stay safe out there. Hope to see everybody face to face super soon. So I'm giving the talk tonight about the topic of rest, something that I'm super passionate about, even if I don't get a lot of it, but more on that in a bit. So I'm willing to bet that most of us have heard of these things called the 10 Commandments, right? A lot of us have heard them, and maybe even non-Christians usually look at this list and can agree that they're pretty good practices, right? Like don't murder, don't steal, don't lie, or spread rumors about other people. But what if I told you that there was one commandment that we're actually pretty okay with breaking as a culture, and sometimes even celebrated for breaking it? It's actually commandment number 4, and this is what it says in Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 to 11. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Basically, there's this notion that 6 days of the week you work, but on the 7th day or the Sabbath day, you ought to take some rest and spend time with God. And this mirrors the way that God created the world in 6 days and then took the 7th one as a day of rest. So I know what you might be thinking. Some of us might think, well, it doesn't mean that we have to take a literal tight 24 hours of Jesus time every week, right? Or Sabbath is just this like old religious thing for the culture back then. And I know that when I was younger, I used to think, well, like technically, if I get at least 4 hours of sleep every night, then it accumulates into a day's worth of rest for the week, right? So I'm good. I want us, though, to explore this idea of Sabbath and try to uncover why we have this rule of rest and see the life-giving gift that's behind this concept. So I don't know about y'all, but I'm constantly finding myself busy. You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was even like a little bit glad that things might slow down and how I might have less things to do. But of course, it didn't take long before the online assignment started, the Zoom meetings, having to adapt to work on digital platforms, setting aside time to connect with friends, Zoom meetings about Zoom meetings. It all piled up. And maybe you all find yourselves overwhelmed with expectations of schoolwork, having to deal with family matters all the time, juggling like the latest drama that's going on in your peer circles. And I'm not here to villainize work or school or family or friends, right? Like work is one of the things that God instructed humanity to do from the beginning. Work isn't the problem. It's replacing God with work that's the problem. This hyper importance of work in our lives, or this glorification of busyness, is almost the default setting for our fast-paced world, right? Like how many of us have seen these inspo posts on Instagram or other social media about how you gotta hustle every day, that you gotta rise and grind your way to success, and the only way to be successful is to overcome stress and come out on top. Friends, this is a vicious mentality. In the Bible, we find people whose worth was tied to their work and the negative effects of that. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses gives another speech to God's people, the Israelites, and he gives the commandments to them from back in Exodus, but includes a couple extra details. So when he talks about the Sabbath, that rhythm of 6 days of work and then 1 day of rest, he says, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day, Deuteronomy 5:15. So Moses includes this little reminder of the fact that God's people were once slaves. And one of the evils of slavery is that it doesn't treat humans as humans. It treats people as property, as tools. As slaves, their identity was basically, you are what you make, you are what you produce. But at this stage in their history, the Israelites have been freed from Egypt and adopted as God's chosen, loved people. So here, the commandment of Sabbath, the day of rest, is a reminder that you are no longer defined by what you make, but by who made you. Now, I want to be clear that the Israelites, along with other cultures throughout history, were made slaves against their will. And I don't want to be reductive about that fact by drawing a comparison. For us, though, many of us have made choices that lead to us feeling enslaved by the world. We get sucked into this feeling that we have to know every single thing that's going on in the news or in our friend circles. That if we aren't up to date on everything that's going down in the group, that we're somehow a bad friend. We get sucked into this feeling that our performance in tests and homework and in jobs is what defines our self-worth. We get sucked into this idea that we're only as good as what we're able to contribute, how much effort we're putting in to stay afloat, or how heavy a weight we're able to carry without cracking. And maybe you're feeling heavy with all these responsibilities and stresses and expectations that the world is putting on you right now. If that's where you're at, then maybe you need a weekly reminder that you're not defined by any of that, but that you're defined by the God who made you. And let's be clear again, it's not like all of this stuff is pure evil. A lot of the work that we do, God uses to bring goodness and beauty into the world. But that doesn't mean we sometimes need these moments of rest from that work to give us perspective. The Sabbath is this reminder of who you are and to switch out the weights that we put on ourselves that hide that true identity. So maybe some of you have had an experience where you do a super vigorous workout or something, or you crank out a difficult assignment, and after completing it, you're like, whew, thank goodness that's over. Break out the pizza, Netflix time, I earned this. And let me tell everybody that this idea that having to earn your way to rest could not be more different from what the Bible shows us. I mentioned at the beginning that the Sabbath was based on the fact that God created the world in 6 days and then rested on the seventh. Now, some of you might know that God created like light on the first day, plants on the third day, human beings on the sixth. But really think about that. God made humans on day 6, and then day 7 was a day of rest. For the first people that God created, their first day of existence was a day of rest. Before they put in any work, before they tilled any ground, before they started their podcast, I don't know, before they did anything, they had a day of rest. And from the beginning of the Bible, we have this glimmer of the gospel message. It's not that we put in all this effort into doing enough good things on the earth, and then Jesus forgives us and allows us to have a right relationship with God again. We're saved because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us and took the penalty of sin on our behalf. It's not that you grind and hustle and stress, and then at the very end, you earn your rest. You rest because of the work that God has already done. Before you did anything, you were loved by God. And that is good news. You didn't have to grind or hustle your way to have a relationship with God. He created that bridge on our behalf. So Sabbath, this isn't just some old ritual where we're forced to follow another rule in order to get in God's good books. It's a reminder of the unearned, undeserved, freely given gift of rest from God. We don't earn our rest. We rest because of the work that Jesus has already done for us. And my friends, that is the gift of Sabbath. So as you meet in your small groups, I want you to be able to ask yourselves and one another, what are the areas of your life where you feel heavy or overwhelmed right now? And what do you think of the Bible's version of rest? Like, does this sound like something that you might think about regularly or want to incorporate into your lifestyle? We would love to know. And lastly, what are some things that you can do to practice Sabbath in your life? I hope that generates some good discussion in your groups. Hopefully everybody is able to find a safe way to meet with one another. We hope to see y'all soon. Stay safe. Take care.